Well, this is Mother's Day, and a more hopeful one than this time last year. But this has been a rough year for mothers and really for all caregivers. There is something that mothers need more than candy or cards or flowers. There is something that mothers and fathers and all caregivers need. And now, for the first time in a long time, there seems to be some hope that that dream might come true. We'll come back to that. Now, some of you remember that I really like to call this Mothering Day. It's a day that includes our birth mothers, adoptive mothers, grandmothers, and all of the people who have loved us with a mothering love. And it's this kind of love that is described in the words of Isaiah. He says, "Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad for her, says the Lord, and you shall nurse and be carried on her arm and dandled on her knees. As a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you, and you will be comforted, and your heart will rejoice, and your body shall flourish like the grass." This is the kind of love that mothers are recognized for providing, not always perfectly, and it's not always the ones who gave us birth that provide this nurturing, strengthening love. Sometimes it's the father, an aunt, an uncle, adoptive parents of any gender. Sometimes it's the friends who choose to be family when we need it most. Now, I'm not usually a fan of Hallmark holidays, these holidays that seem to be invented just to sell candy and cards. But this one actually has an important origin story that we rarely hear about. Because Mother's Day, this Mothering Day, really should be known as a day of peace. That's really how Mother's Day got started. Now the Hallmark cards and the florist might be profiting from this holiday, but that was never its purpose. It started in the 1850s when Anne Reeves Jarvis was a young mother in West Virginia, and she started what she called work-day clubs for mothers. She gathered together groups of women to work towards improving sanitary conditions, seeking to lower infant mortality, fighting disease, stopping milk contamination, teaching local women the best way to care for their children. So first, Mother's Day has its roots in a nonprofit startup providing health care. Then around 1868, as the Civil War ended, Anne Jarvis expanded the purpose of these groups, and she organized Mothers' Friendship Days. Now the mothers gathered together with former Union and Confederate soldiers' mothers to grieve the loss of their loved ones and to promote reconciliation. And after the Civil War had ended, Julia Ward Howe couldn't forget the experiences she had, the realities of war. She became more determined that peace and equality were the most important causes in the world. As she saw the potential for more wars to start, she wanted women to come together across national lines to recognize the things that we hold in common above what divides us, to commit to finding peaceful resolutions to conflict. So she worked to start a Mother's Peace Day. She dedicated this celebration to the eradication of war, and she wrote this Mother's Day declaration, which really should be repeated every single Mother's Day. She wrote, "Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or tears, and say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause, and our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all we have been able to teach them of charity and mercy and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. That is a Mother's Day mantra. And finally, next, the daughter of Anne Reeves Jarvis was building on the work of these two women, and she began organizing Mother's Day celebrations in cities around the country. So in 1914, the second Sunday in May was set aside for a national holiday. And I always find it interesting and a bit coincidental that 1914 is the year that this congregation was established here in Atlanta. But the thing that strikes me most about the history of this holiday is that it comes with so much depth and so much meaning that we don't see on the surface. For these women, these mothers, and these caregivers took their concern for their own family, and they kept it growing and expanding their circle of care and compassion. And this is what I really think it means to be created in the image of God. For this is the image of God that we see revealed in the scriptures that we read this morning. God comes to us as a mother who nurtures, as a father who guides. The words of the prophet Isaiah follow and allow us to see God more often as this mothering figure. One who gives life and affection and comfort and joy and nurtures the life of a growing child into adulthood. God as a mother who gives comfort shows up in many parts of Isaiah. In Isaiah 42, God cries out like a woman in labor with this analogy of a mother gasping in the pain of childbirth. In Isaiah 49, God is depicted as being even more attentive than a nursing mother. More compassionate, God shall never let God's children be left behind. Then in our gospel passage, we overhear Jesus praying for the safety of those that he is about to leave. It's a prayer filled with parental love and concern, prayed around a shared meal in a time of transition. The language that Jesus uses to describe this relationship between himself and God, between God and these followers, is that of a loving and anguished parent, blessing these adult children into their future. We can all relate to that feeling, that love that exists beyond gender roles, concern about what possibilities and what dangers the future holds for those that we love. And there's a lot to be concerned about in our complex times, but there is one thing that I am grateful for. That is our broadening understanding of gender roles. There seems to be finally a growing freedom for individuals to be who they are, for families to be the kind of family that they need to be. There's an increasing openness to allowing each individual to share their strengths and their skills regardless of any gender designations, free of unrealistic expectations, letting families grow into the families they were created to be. But then we do have to recognize that in this pandemic year, this year has shown us that women and mothers and caregivers still bear the work of managing households, of caring for children and the elderly with minimal or no pay for long hours of work. For many moms and many caregivers, this has been a year of turmoil, of difficult decisions, a year of virtual learning and diaper changing while on work calls, and nonstop cooking and cleaning and figuring out unemployment and vaccine hunting for elderly parents, caring for sick family members while trying to be everything kids and families need them to be. Becoming default teachers and therapists and stand in for all those friends and classmates. and breadwinners facing a record number of pandemic job losses. There is something that mothers need right now more than candy and cards and flowers. Something that mothers and fathers and all caregivers need, and for once, there is hope that this might be possible. We need a society that values families. We need policies that make it possible to raise children and care for aging parents without losing jobs or falling into poverty. Yes, we do need an infrastructure for our roads and our bridges throughout our country. But we need something that we have never really had before, a basic infrastructure of care. Building a care infrastructure means advancing universal child care, paid family and medical leave, home and community-based services. It would include living wages, protection for pregnant workers, a path to citizenship for care workers and their communities who do so much of the work in our country. We needed these things way before the pandemic hit. And if this past year has shown us anything, it's that we must prioritize a care infrastructure that truly enables moms and caregivers to get the jobs that are needed to support families, to create good caregiving jobs. Decades of underinvestment in families is what has made this pandemic so disastrous for our communities and families. More than 2 million women have been forced out of the labor force. In January alone, 1.4 million fewer mothers of school-aged children were working for pay than had been the previous year. Those who lost their jobs, more than 600,000 were Black, 600,000 Latina. Women of color have suffered the most. This pandemic has shown us the devastating economic and personal cost of our country's lack of support for families, for parents, by failing to invest in a care infrastructure that includes family leave, medical leave, child care, and long-term senior care. So this year, along with the candy and the cards and the flowers, let's give our mothers, our families, our caregivers the gift of support that they need. Let's let our representatives know that we value all families, that caregiving is essential work, and we want an infrastructure that undergirds and supports families in our country. Because we believe in a creator who created out of love and who loves like a parent. God, the ultimate parent, is never finished caring and nurturing and comforting and providing for all her children, never giving up, never calling it quits. The essence of this kind of mothering love is that it is never diminished. Instead, it grows and it expands as it is given away. And this is the thing that we celebrate in acknowledging and remembering our mothers and all of our mothering caregivers. So may we today give thanks for the people who have shown us how to live and flourish and grow, to laugh and to cry, to keep food on the table and still give it away. The people who inspire us to never give up on life and love, no matter how painful and messy it may get. And may we follow in their footsteps. And now together, let us sing.